kind of strategy. My goal here is to provide you with knowledge that's beyond the 101 stuff. So the thing with FranDev is a lot of while everything's changing, nothing actually changes. So it is a very traditional strategy, whatever you want to call it, industry vertical, but there are some things that you can do now to kind of tighten things up. So before we get started, obviously, my name's Madeline Zook. I'm the director of marketing at NetSertive, and also was in franchise development for Threshold Brands for about a decade. We had one brand. When I left, we had like 11. So have seen the gauntlet. And then in terms of NetSertive, we're a localized digital marketing firm. We do paid media, organic, search, SEO. The biggest thing, we're announcing is that we have just opened franchise development as well to our services. You can see a couple of our clients here. And I think that the biggest benefit for NetSertive is not only do we localize, but in terms of, what our software does, but on the people side, we have people who are franchisees, who were franchisors, working with you. So we see the ins and outs, we see the pain points, and I know a bunch of you guys on here are actually clients of ours. So if you ever need help, we're here. So to get started, I'm going to take you guys through kind of like a step-by-step process of what your franchise development should look like. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or the Q&A, and hopefully I can answer them on the fly. But step one are your foundations, what you actually need to get started, whether you're revamping your strategy, making it for 2024, trying to do an end of year push. You need to go back to the drawing board and make sure you have these things. So the first thing is making sure your FDD is buttoned up, and anything regarding your FDD is buttoned up. A lot of you have on your website numbers from your different items in your FDD. Make sure on the website the numbers are updated to this year's. Make sure your offers are updated. Make sure your offer for what your franchise brand makes sense. For MadePro, it was always, we're in the business of helping others. So what is that message? What is that mission? Making sure that you're going to be able to make that very clear. And I'm going to talk really fast because I only have half an hour, just so you guys know. And then have a complete understanding of your numbers. So what that means is not just, oh, this is how much it costs. These are how much our operating cost is, but as you're making your FranDev strategy, you need to really understand the money out and the money in terms of making your goals for the future. Because I talk to a lot of franchise brands that are, I want to sell 50, I'm going to get to 100, I want to get over 10. But there really is no rhyme or reason to why those numbers, other than they look good on paper. But you have to have a full understanding of how much it's costing to get these leads, to start to get the close. And on top of that, how much you're spending, in terms of a new ramp up period. And then what is the lifetime value of your that franchisee worth? And then being able to kind of work the numbers backwards and relay those into your budget. So that's what I mean of having a complete understanding, is how much are you getting holistically from a franchise, and then kind of piecing together what your budget is, what your support system can afford, before you start making goals. The next is to have a dedicated team, or the dedicated tasks given to someone for their responsibility. I think the problem with FranDev is that it's never going to take priority over your consumer or franchisee departments when everything's in one. So when I was there, I was the dedicated person for franchise marketing only. I was in charge of all the admin, all of the brokers, the franchise sales needs. And even if you can't afford that, or that's not quite the structure that you're going to have for your team, making sure that whoever on your team is going to handle FranDev understands that it can't be a secondary priority. Because the problem is that while it is only one entity or one campaign, it really carries the most weight in terms of cost per lead, the money coming in. So you want to make sure that someone's keeping an eye on it all the time. A lot of times I see it as a set it and forget it, because, you know, it's just one thing and it's live and that's great. But it's not enough anymore. And I can tell you from experience that Fran Dev Marketing is heavy on the admin work, heavy on the paperwork. So you want to make sure that you have all of those buttoned up as well. So then getting into the stuff that you actually need, make sure your consumer site looks good, because that's the first thing that candidates are going to go to. If you have a CTA that doesn't work, if you've got text that it's off or something that's, we'll get to it eventually. That's going to have a hindrance on the people, your candidates' first impression of you. So make sure you get those cleaned up. The next is have a franchise development website. And that could be, so we had madepro.com and then madeprofranchise.com. If that's not something that you want to do as a whole, and you just want to have it as like a standalone page on the consumer site, that's fine too. But don't make it an afterthought, because again, we're expecting these people to invest thousands and thousands of dollars with us. You should be investing that as well to their process to spend that. So for FranDev, you know, I highly recommend having a website, especially because we really need that conversion focus. So it's not just an educational piece with a phone number that says call now. You really want to start telling your brand story from the get-go. So, you know, I worked with ZBART a lot. I did these for MadePros, and what we determined, kind of a trade secret here, was making your website feel like a mini version of the sales process as they're learning more about you. So you can kind of see, I know it's small, but for here we go, you know, why exterior cleaning? Why the industry? Why do you want to choose this industry? Then it's why us? Why do you want to choose us within this industry? And then you kind of go into more of, here's your cost comparison. Here's our industry versus others. Here's us for the other brands. And then, you know, here are owners. Okay, so the cost makes sense. Now hear from some people that have already done it. And you can kind of see a screenshot down here if we had the testimonials. And then that sounds really great. Now I'm going to contact you. So you're giving them, you know, kind of a path to why they should convert, instead of just telling them convert, 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 or, you know, what a contact, and providing information that doesn't necessarily have to be all of it, but just enough. Okay, so that's, you know, that's a good kind of rule of thumb for if you're developing your franchise website, or you have just a single page that you have copy or content on. You know, think of it through the sales process, just as kind of like a mini sale. That conversion is a mini sale. Next is landing pages. You should have at least 1 or 2 landing pages that are specifically for your paid digital ads. This would be, you know, a 1-pager that has a little bit about the information and a form right away. You don't want to send them right to the website, because that, like I said, if they are already converting on an ad, they don't want to click 4 more times to then get to the form. So you want to give them what they need right away. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but for social media, you need to point them to landing pages. The next is making sure your Google page is set up, or your Google account, your social medias, and then your reviews are tight. Franchisees, I know they're in charge of their reviews. If there's nothing big and glaring, then that's fine. Sometimes franchisors have reviews as well, whether it's the first one that pops up on Glassdoor, or I think that there used to be a site like terriblefranchises.com. If there's anything you can do there to take care of maybe a disgruntled previous franchisee or candidate, make sure you take care of those too, because, you know, it can be in a sea of good things and they're always going to see that one shark. And then collateral. This is something that you're going to need. So you want to have it up front. You want your images, you want your videos, you want your abouts. We did this ebook for ZBART recently. It's just a great piece to have that they're able to include on their website and their landing page, kind of as gated content. And also is really great to share with broker networks as well. And then lastly, which isn't lastly, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it though, is validations. So you should not be doing franchise development at all if you're validating terribly, or you need to pause it if you're just not going to validate, because first of all, even if you can sell with bad validations, one, your salesperson's amazing, but two, you got bigger problems than selling more locations. So make sure you've got those. Use your code words so nobody is, secret shopping you. Share your validations around so that you're not, the same person isn't getting called a million times. And if you're a newer brand that doesn't have necessarily franchisees to call, send over, recommendation, or whatever the word is, references, other people who have worked with you or other franchises that you've worked with in the past. So if you're starting a brand from the ground up, they still get a feel for who you are as a person and as, a franchisor / business owner. So moving on, the next step is your marketing. So you've got all your foundations, you're ready to push some money over to them. So the tier 1, you will need your Google ads. So I talked to this a little bit, but just for, if anyone is confused, Google organic are people that are just typing you in, finding you, not clicking on any ad. PPC are people who are, maybe Googling you and then clicking your ad, which is probably the first 1, 2, 3 links that come up on Google. If you are not going to pay for your brand's keywords, your competitors are. So there is such a thing as competitor keyword, campaigns. And what those brands do is that they can bid on your brand name. That's kind of one of the strategies. So if you're not going to put money into bidding on at least your brand, your competitor is. So when someone types in, Maddie's franchise, and all of a sudden, Nick's franchise comes up first, they're going to be like, oh, I was looking for Maddie, but this is easy and first, and let me look at that. So that's a quick way to lose traffic and lose leads. It sucks, but you have to do it. I mean, Google is just number 1. You have to do it. And I'm saying this too for the brands that don't necessarily need an influx of new blood. They have people organically coming to them. They have a huge network. You still want to own your brand name, and you want to own that number 1 spot on Google, no matter what. So that is your biggest thing. The second thing, social ads. Whether or not you like social media, whether or not it works for you, you need to at least, and this is more specifically for people who are looking to get more traffic and more people in, you have to be where the people are, and that's where they are. In portal leads do not work in terms of, fill the form out on Facebook, and then we have our own little lead database, yada, yada, yada. That shit does not work. You have to send them to the landing page and then convert them from there. So really, it's a nice way to get in front of them. Brand awareness, everyone knows you need about 7 to 10 touch points before anyone even clicks on you. So that's a great way to, get those views up. And the same thing with retargeting afterwards. A lot of times I see things on Facebook. I'm like, I'm going to buy that. And then I don't. And then I see it 3 times later and I do. So the retargeting is also a great way to do that as well. LinkedIn, as much as I am Miss LinkedIn Queen, love it. It does not work for franchise development unless you have a huge budget. The display ads, the in-portal lead ads for LinkedIn, I've spent probably $10,000 to $20,000 with franchise brands trying to make it work, and it's just not there yet. I know it's like it seems like the perfect sea of people, but unless you have a huge budget and you also have the manual labor to go in and really do that personal networking, it's not a great place to put your budget. And then lastly, lead portals. So the reason I say lead portals is because they are great for brand awareness. They have a huge SEO presence. And, a lot of times that's where people are going to start their franchise journey. I understand that the lead portals aren't the best quality, but they do provide volume. And they also have a thing, what I call halo effect. So we have found, or did find, and I'm talking like $500,000 of testing, that when we turned lead portals off, our traffic went down, or our organic leads went down, our Google leads our PPC leads went down. And then when we would turn them on, it would jump right back up. And I think that's because people were seeing us, maybe seeing some of the awards we've seen, and then typing us in. So there is something to be said for lead portals. And the great thing about it is you can set a very, very low budget because it's pay per lead no matter what. And it's also good to kind of get sales off your back because they have that consistent flow of leads. Because everyone knows that when sales starts to see that pipeline get thin, people get very worried. And then the next is your broker networks. Those might be in tier 1 if you can afford them. Typically we see them after they've done the tier 1 things. Trade shows, great way to get a quick influx of leads, especially if you're geo-targeting. But a lot of times what I tell people is these trade shows are, I don't know, $5,000 to $20,000, and you can do a whole hell of a lot with that money if you push it into digital rather than, you know, going to a trade show and just having that one local area, especially if you're not necessarily tied to that local area. Connected TV, you're going to see a lot of these now. I just recently saw Huntington Learning Center, CertaPro, I think Goddard School, just when I was watching, I think, I don't know, Hulu or Amazon the other day. So that connected TV is coming up because you can very highly target it. And then also it doesn't cost $40,000, which we used to see with linear media buys. Next, you can have your mailers, your other print media, your media buys. You know, I've tried the entrepreneur website banner takeover. It was like, ended up being like $800 a lead. So those are costly. They're great for, you know, getting your name out there, specifically industry focused. But again, that's going to be primarily for brand awareness, and you're not going to see any real direct leads come from that. And then lastly, making sure, and I probably should have put this in tier 1, but making sure your referral offer is on point for your current franchisees who might refer someone in their network. This is specifically good for franchises that don't have protected territories. And if you want to use some of the your budget from your national advertising fund and on maybe co-op mailers or something, right? Like franchise opportunities near you where you can offset the franchisees' mailing costs and also have a little bit of a franchise development push in there. Being able to have those referral offers and, you know, kind of work your current successful networks are benefits as well. I knew I was going to get a question on this. Oh, okay. Example of a great referral offer. So I think one of the offers for Made Pro was if an owner, referred someone in their network and they ended up purchasing a new into the brand, becoming a franchisee, they would get $10,000 credited towards their royalties. So we were never actually paying out money, but we were giving them a credit, and that was honestly less because I think our cost per acquisition at the time was around $24,000. So it was technically $14,000 less than we would have paid for a new location anyway. So that's always a good way to kind of think of it as well. And then having that credit to their royalties is a nice, because you're not actually, you know, cutting checks and having to deal with that cash flow issue. And yes, of course, with the referral offers and the co-ops, you have to be, you know, very careful if you're starting to get into the NAT fund as well. But again, an idea I wanted to send out there. The next is that for your Google PPC, stay away from terms like top franchises to own, best franchises to own. They're expensive, they're wasteful. You want to start with top home cleaning franchise. Why? Or start a cleaning franchise, something that's more industry specific, because those are going to be more bang for your buck. When you get into the top franchises, best franchises, we're talking like $100 to $300 a click. And you want to be much lower than that. And then another thing I wanted to point out that I talk a lot about is that the more you geo target, the lower your lead volume is going to be digitally. It's the opposite for consumer, where if you saturate Ambler, Pennsylvania with your whole budget, you're going to get a ton of leads. If you do that for franchise development, the search volume is so low that your lead volume is going to drastically drop. And the timeline to, get leads and convert them is going to be painstakingly long. So just something to think about. If you really do need a geo target, I recommend doing area takeovers, which is like digital, billboards, sponsorships, trade shows. So that's something that, is more primed for, we have one location left in Texas and we need to sell it because it's a great market. But just something to point out, because again, I've wasted thousands of dollars thinking geo-targeting would work. And instead my sales team wanted to slap me over the head. Good example of lead portals, Franchise Gator, Biz Buy Sell, Franchise Direct, I believe is still one. I think franchise.com. They Franchise Business Review. They fluctuate a lot with, who produces the best leads when and where, but traditionally Biz Buy Sell, Franchise Business Review are among the top ones. And then lead portals are cost per lead. So you should be looking at anywhere between probably $35 a lead and $65. I think Franchise Business Review is on the higher end of that because they are very qualified leads. But for the average one, you're looking at about $35 to maybe $45 a lead, and they're very negotiable. So negotiate that shit down, man, as much as you can. All right, I have 8 minutes and I'm not even close to being done. So I'm gonna, what can franchise marketing do for relationship with broker networks? I'll get to that, Ethan, if I have time. Okay, so nurturing, first response, set expectations in writing, make a plan for outside regular business hours. A lot of times people are at work and then they decide to hate their job. They submit the franchise development conversion form. And then all of a sudden they don't hear back for, if it's on a Friday afternoon, they're not going to hear back for 48 hours. And that's not what you want. So talk to your team about reaching out to them, the people who contact you as soon as possible, or set realistic expectations within an email. We'll get back to you within 2 business days. The sooner rather the better, because time kills deals. But making sure you have that expectation for your dev team. Email drips. You need to have your sales touch points where they're all, doing their sales thing but also having the informational email drips. We did this through HubSpot. So we had personal qualifiers, which I should say we had a general email drip that was just kind of, you can see here, an educational email. We had you could just keep adding to it. So by the time I left, I think there was 100 emails in that drip, and it was spread out over a year. And it was primarily just how great our brand is, educational. So if someone bought a MadePro and was still in this drip, it didn't matter because they were still getting great content about a brand they now own. You can segment these out now by personal qualifiers, meaning, are they someone that is an entrepreneur? Is it someone looking for work-life balance? They hate corporate, they're retired, they're a veteran, they're a conversion, they're international, they're a first responder. Whatever segments you see in your person or in your franchise brand, those are drips you can create and then put people into so that the content is speaking more to them. And you can do this through persona qualifiers. So when your franchise development rep hears phrases XYZ or keywords XYZ, they know I got to flip them in the CRM to this specific persona. Another thing is be careful of the me content. A lot of times I worked with Josie when she was at a place at home on this. Their franchise drips was, we're so great, we're so great, we're so great. Why isn't it converting? Why aren't people clicking or opening? I was like, because people don't care that you're great. People want stuff for themselves. So focus on what they're getting, for here, you get a community with MadePro. You get a better work-life balance. You get to help people instead of, we're a franchise that does this. Make sure it's very them focused. Have the tangibles, give them some swag. Everyone loves free shit. And then, keep up with current brand events. I know press releases are a pain in the ass. I know there's good things, good photos coming every which way at marketing from your current franchisees, but as much as you can gather those and make sure you're incorporating them into the market in your fran dev, it's a nice validation that this candidate is on the right track with your brand. You guys are doing great things, and kind of gets them a little bit more excited. What resources have you used to create the ideal personas? So for NetCertive, because they are digital, a lot of times they're looking at, the keywords and the data. In terms of myself, I lead the franchise development team. So I work with them, work with you personally to create those ideal franchise personas. We have templates I'm happy to share, the qualifier templates. So shoot me an email or a LinkedIn DM, and I'd be happy to share those with you. And they're free. Don't worry, I'm not trying to sell you anything. Oh my God, I have 4 minutes. Okay, sales. What candidates want? You need a strict sales process and a discovery day agenda. Don't leave it loosey-goosey. You want it as tight as possible to keep people on a timeline and keep people accountable internally for what they need to deliver and when. Have a sales script. Always ask where this candidate found you. It's going to help with lead generation. Once you start hearing obstacles to purchase, like, oh, I can't get the loan, or, my mom doesn't want me to buy it, or whatever, then you can start creating talking tracks for your franchise development reps. So no matter what obstacle they come, they know how to talk through it. Same thing with limbo, people who are just like indecisive, and also, providing them resources. Oh, here's our, Benetrends, here's ADP, they're, things that they can help streamline their education. Removing the bottlenecks. We used to have a CEO that wanted to be on every friggin' call, and his schedule was already full. So we had to really work through that, making sure that his calendar was always open 3 to 4 every Thursday. Whatever you need to do, remove the bottlenecks, and incentivize your team. I was on a marketing team and I still got commission. I got $500 for every franchise we sold. So now that's, nothing compared to the percentage commission that your fran dev should be getting, but it was a nice thing on the dev team to kind of, it was uplifting. And not to mention, every time we sold a franchise, we would take a shot. It was just fun. I'm not trying to glorify drinking, but it was just something to keep the team going, because these are big purchases. They're life-changing for everyone involved. So, making sure that this doesn't just become an average sales process. Have a scorecard. So after your discovery day, unless your discovery day, you've already decided, but if you're kind of using your discovery day as your final, do we sign them, do we not? Having a scorecard for everyone who comes into presentation with them to fill out is a great way to discuss and rate whether this person would be good in your system, rather than just feelings or, having a conversation that might turn into, head butting. So use a scorecard. Coach people on how to say no as well. It's important. It's going to be important that you guys say no. Oh my God, I have 1 minute. I'm going to send out the deck afterwards, but analytics, stay up to date with your actuals monthly and by outlet. So while it's good to see what your average cost per lead and acquisition is, the more you can drill down, the better spent your budget will be. So, and 2, stay on top of your pay per lead portals. Bug them. If you're not getting enough leads, bug them. If your traffic is down, bug them. They can flip some switches on their end, and then it would be amazing what you can see if you push them on their customer support. Decipher what's considered qualified for you. For MadePro, we decided anyone with 75,000 and up was qualified. On our submission form before they became a lead, they had to click a drop down of their investment levels. That way it filtered out people who had less than 20. Between 20 and 75 was, financing available, and then 75 plus was qualified. That way, once you're analyzing your numbers, you can see where the leads came from, which is your cost per lead per generator, of those which were qualified. So how are they qualifying? And then of those which made it to the next steps, and of those who closed. That will show you your final cost per acquisition per outlet. So now you can adjust your spending, where I'm not getting a lot of closings with Franchise Gator. I'm going to pull back on spend there, but hey, Franchise Business Review is actually, we've closed, 2 out of 50. So I'm going to push more of the budget there. So that's a good way to do it as well. Yep, Tanasha, she said, I did the bugging thing 2 weeks with them on the portals, and then they're already increased 25%. So yeah, so that is, definitely something that works. Okay, on the dot, even though I talked so fast, Here's some of the leaders in franchise development and such. So basically, holistically, you really need to have a firm grip on the decision to do franchise development all the way through to the close. You need to support that process as you would a current franchisee, and not just the candidates in it, but internally. And, I'm including like your vendors in that. The more that you can detail out your numbers, detail out why you're great, and explaining that in terms of what the candidate gets from you, and looping those all into link backs, a process, a conversation, the better you're going to be able to spend. I think you saw on this form right now, we're looking at about 28,000 as a typical cost per acquisition for those low to mid-level investment ranges. So you have to remember that if you want to sell 60 and your average cost is 28,000, that's 28,000 times 60. So that's what you can expect to spend. It's a big number to swallow, and a lot of times I have to coach brands through that. But understanding, also from the beginning, how that relays back into your numbers in terms of how much is a franchisee going to be worth in their lifetime? How much can my support system hold before I have to hire more people? That is all going to incorporate into your success with validations, your lead generation, your sales staff. I am happy to talk with anyone through this in another group or on another webinar, or specifically, this is my bread and butter. I have to jump to another meeting, as I'm sure a lot of you do, but I will send all these out. Feel free to ping me anytime. And sorry I had to rush. It's another episode of Maddie Didn't Book Enough Time. All right, thanks guys.